Good morning, everyone. This is Sharon Barker, and I'm the Vice President and COO at the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. And I want to welcome you to our virtual Congressional Day. Thank you for being part of this, and we're going to have opportunities for you to hear from quite a few legislators and their staff. And we have some speakers with us today that I know you'll find their information very interesting, and we're really happy you're with us. I want to tell you that you probably were expecting to see Stacy Berger here this morning and see her face on the screen instead of mine. She's our president and CEO, and she is with the governor this morning as he's presenting his state budget. They were planning on doing it later in the day, but because of the heat, they moved it up earlier. And so we have done the divide and conquer, as many of you do in your offices as well. So Stacy is on the field at Rutgers and hearing about the state budget, which we are hoping, and from what we're hearing, the governor has really done everything he could to make sure that no one is being hurt tragically in this budget process, and that he's doing the best he can to get money out. Maybe it's a little less than we had before, but getting money out to everyone in the state that needs it, the programs that need it. So a lot of you have gone with us to Washington before or gone to in-district meetings, and we want to let you know that we brought this together because we know we can't go to Washington right now, and we can't do in-district meetings, and we couldn't be on our traditional lobby days. So we wanted to make sure you all had this opportunity and that our electeds had the opportunity to talk to you about what was going on. So there are 7 members of the congressional delegation with us today, and they will be talking about the different bills that are out there and what's happening. And there's some of them, it's their staff, and you will hear from them as well and be able to bring questions forward. So we also have some presentations from National Low Income Housing Coalition, Center for Budget Policy Priorities, and the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign, which we in New Jersey were very proud to be part of the very first class or cohort of that program. And we continue to support that program as we move forward. So again, we want to hear from you. So type questions into the chat box. We will make sure that those questions are answered. If we can't get to them today or the question is very detailed, we'll get back to you in writing, but we will get those questions across. And we know that this is a really, it's a tough time for a lot of people. And we're dealing with concerns about not having the additional funding for families right now on top of the unemployment. We're worried about foreclosure prevention. We're worried about the potential tsunami of evictions. We've been working on this for quite a while, and we know that you're struggling or your clients are struggling, and that we are really everyone's trying to help make ends meet right now. So we need these critical federal resources to help us now and to prevent that eviction tsunami that we know is around the corner. So we also need to lay some groundwork for the future to address the affordable housing crisis. So today, we're again hearing from members of our congressional delegation, and the very first one, and I see that he is on the line, is Congressman Payne, Congressman Donald Payne from the 10th District, and he represents parts of Union, Essex, and Hudson counties, and he has served in Congress since 2012. And before that, he was the president of the Newark City Council. The congressman is a co-sponsor of the bill for $100 billion in rental assistance that passed the House and a strong advocate for affordable homes. The congressman is chairman of the subcommittee on emergency preparedness, response, and recovery. And last month, he brought our key members in the district on a call with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who is the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, to hear the latest action to address the housing crisis in this country. This is just an example of how he works closely with our members in his district, and he wants to keep them informed and be available to them. And so we are very, very honored to have you with us today, Congressman, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being with us. We're not hearing you, Congressman, so we need your sound. You are self-muted, so I can't unmute you.
Try
There
it
you
again.
go. Oh,
I think you had it before. I saw your little microphone was green. So you might want to click on the microphone icon again. There we go. No.
nope, you
Oh.
turned it off again. Okay, this is the age of Zoom meetings, right? Every system is a little different, and this is, there we go, you're on.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, none of my children are home, so I'm technically challenged.
We all understand.
But it's a real honor and privilege to be here with you today for this virtual Congressional Day. I want to thank the Housing Community and Development Network of New Jersey for inviting me to be a part of this event. For more than 30 years, the network has done outstanding work to revitalize distressed neighborhoods throughout the state. Affordable housing was an issue in our country before this global pandemic brought our economy to a halt. And now our current economic crisis could mean less affordable housing in the future, and that's something we just cannot tolerate. In addition, there are millions of Americans who lost jobs and could lose their homes. We have a president that has declared war on low-income housing and low-income Americans. That is one reason I am a strong supporter of low and middle income housing initiatives that are throughout the Congress. I voted for the HEROES Act because it provided aid to the low-income Americans that need it the most. And, you know, there are Americans who benefit from affordable housing projects. That bill authorized another direct payment to low and middle income Americans. And it provided $175 billion to help these Americans pay their rent, mortgages, and bills throughout the crisis. These times are stressful enough without the threat of being evicted from your home. The bill would allow them to stay in their homes and apartments. Yet, renters are not the only ones suffering right now. If renters are not able to pay their rent, property owners are not able to pay their mortgages either. I co-sponsored the Insuring Homes Act because it helps renters and property owners equally. This bill would push back the due date on deferred mortgage payments to the end of the loan, not the end of the deferral period. Also, it would encourage landlords to extend leases and stop evictions in exchange for a forgivable loan from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. In addition, there are actions that I've taken to improve access to affordable housing before this public health crisis occurred. I co-sponsored the Build More Housing Near Transit Act because I know there is a lack of affordable housing near transit stations. Easy access to local public transportation should not only be for upper income Americans. It is the lower and middle income Americans who need easy access to public transportation to get to work and school. This bill would change local land use policies to allow for more affordable housing development near transit stations and along transit routes. These are just a few of the things that I've done in Congress and to help improve the housing situation back in the 10th Congressional District. But I enjoy events like this, and I wish it was in person because it's always a wonderful event. To chance to hear from my constituents and people in this space that are working on it every single day. So again, I thank you for the invitation to be here and look forward to being on this panel.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I will open it up in case anyone has any questions for the Congressman, but I do know that we did get one that was typed in. What can we do right now to support the efforts of our New Jersey delegation?
Well, you just, I think the continued advocacy that you've demonstrated over the years, it just has to be consistent. We have to continue to push and make sure that the administration and people in power know that you support the efforts of your delegation. So I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and just continue to do what you're doing. We really appreciate it, and we need the support. When we hear from our constituents, it makes it a lot easier to move forward, knowing that you have their backing. We work for you, and for us to know that you agree with the things that we're advocating and pushing forward, just really makes it a lot easier to continue the work. So thank you.
Congressman, I wish everybody in Congress remembered that, right? Who works for
Absolutely.
whom, right? I know you
Absolutely.
always do, and we appreciate that. What do you think is going to happen? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not asking you to, pick the lottery numbers for me for this week, but what do you think is going to happen timing-wise right now regarding the HEROES Act? Do you have any clue as to next steps?
No, I think that Senator McConnell is just dead set against it even coming off his table. Obviously, Mr. Schumer and Ms. Pelosi are negotiating with the White House. So the Senate really isn't even involved. It's just, which is ridiculous because it eventually has to go through the Senate. So it just doesn't make sense that, Mitch McConnell is sitting on his hands and, once again, it's like a 10-year-old child. I'm not going to play. I'm going to take my toys and go home. And you can't do anything without me. So, I mean, it's absolutely absurd. The whole country's future is at stake, and these men are playing childish games, and it's frightening. It really is that we've come to this point, and but it seems like there's some movement in the White House. They're trying to get something done, but it's just a matter where we end up with respect to the deal that is cut. So Ms. Pelosi, Mr. Schumer continue to push and advocate for the people of America, and hopefully we'll get something done soon. We have to. There's no other choice. Country is in dire straits, and it's incumbent upon us to step up and do what we need to do in order to straighten things out. So.
Congressman, I have to say we thank you very much for all you do all the time. We know that, when we pick up the phone and we call your office or we ask you a question or reach out to your staffers, your response is always right away. You're always there for us. And we know you're doing everything you can to make sure that we have decent, safe, and affordable homes and strong communities and healthy communities. So we really do appreciate all your efforts, and especially your time here with us this morning. We know we asked everybody for a few minutes, and I want to respect that as much as possible because I know it's not really a time off when you're not in DC. We know you've got your day scheduled very heavily. So thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And please, if you need anything from us, you reach out and let us know.
Absolutely. I really appreciate all your efforts. And, just this is what advocacy looks like. And, I just want to commend you once again for all your efforts. It's serious work. You don't play around. You're serious about your work. And that's what needs to happen. And so thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Congressman. You have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
So we are moving on, and I will say thank you for anybody that has anything, put it into the comments box, but I will tell you that I'm not going to get into, I will not ask any questions that are about Republican versus Democrat. That's not what we're about today, and the invitation was spread around to everyone. So this is not something that we'll get into today. You're more than welcome to type whatever you want, but just know I won't ask those questions. So our next speaker, and we are always thrilled when we're able to do this introduction, or when I'm able to do this introduction. Diane Yentel, who's the president and CEO of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, is with us. If you were at our conference, gosh, a year ago, it feels like it was like 12 years ago since we've all been in our houses. She was our speaker and was absolutely wonderful and inspired so many of us. And every time I hear her, I'm inspired. And I'm sure some of you have heard this, but Stacy Berger, our CEO, always refers to Diane as our president. She's our president. And we're very proud to say that we are members of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and we turn to Diane for information, for help, for ideas, how to approach things. The organization brings together people from all different aspects and elected officials to have conversations on how to address the affordable homes crisis and how to bring us forward and have more equity and equality in housing. And so I'm not going to talk a whole lot. I want to let Diane speak. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Diane. If you want to put your slides in your camera. There she is. Good morning.
Here I
love seeing
am.
your smile.
Hi.
And I'm going to turn my camera off, and you're on, Diane. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Sharon, for that introduction, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be back with my friends in New Jersey. It's always a pleasure, and I always enjoy the opportunity to talk with you all about what's happening, and especially appreciate the opportunity to be here now during such a consequential time when it's so clear that if Congress doesn't act and doesn't act soon, we will see a housing crisis unlike any I've ever seen in my lifetime. So I do have some slides, and I want to see if those are ready to come up. There we go. All right. So I think, to best really understand the scale and the scope of the housing crisis we face now, we have to recognize where we were even before COVID-19 came to our country, and that was in the midst of a severe affordable housing crisis, where we had over 550,000 people experiencing homelessness, and those numbers had been increasing over the last several years. We were in the middle of a severe affordable housing shortage, where we had a deficit of 7 million homes affordable and available to the lowest income renters. So another way of saying that same number is for every 10 of the lowest income renters, there were fewer than 4 apartments that were affordable and available to them. And you can see from this map that the shortage ranges from most severe to least severe. But there is no community in the country that has a sufficient number of homes affordable and available to the lowest income people. Next slide, please. So because of this shortage, rents are far out of reach for low income renters. The national average for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment is much more than what even the average renter earns. Those 1 and 2 bedroom average rents are the red lines at the bottom. And everything above it is what the average renter earns, or what an extremely low income renter earns, what a person with a disability or a senior on a limited fixed income can afford to pay on rent. So because we had such a shortage of homes affordable for the lowest income people, even before COVID-19, we had about 10 million very low or extremely low income renters who were paying at least half of their income towards rent each month, and many were paying much more, 60, 70, 80% of their income just to have a roof over their heads. And so when you have such limited income to begin with, and you're paying so much of it for your home, you're always one financial emergency away from missing rent and potentially being evicted, and in worst cases, becoming homeless. Next slide, please. So for many of these same renters, the coronavirus is that financial shock. They've lost jobs, they've lost hours at work, they've lost wages, and it's harder than ever for them to cobble together what's needed in order to pay rent. By our estimate, a very conservative estimate, this loss of jobs and loss of wages will mean somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million households will become very low income or extremely low income. So increasing the number of people that are competing for this already very limited supply of homes affordable to them. Next slide, please. And it's important to recognize that these job losses are not being felt equally. So Blacks and Latinos are losing jobs faster than white workers. Next slide, please. So if we had a system in our country to catch people when, oops, back one. If we had a system in our country to catch people when they fall off a financial cliff from any disaster, but especially one like COVID-19 and its financial fallout, we could better weather these challenges. But of course, we don't have that system in our country. Instead, we have a system where only 1 in every 4 households who needs housing assistance and is eligible for it receives any. So 75% of people who need housing assistance are eligible, they receive none. And they are the folks who have to stand in line to add their names to years, sometimes decades long waiting lists, hoping to win what is essentially a housing lottery system in our country, where the lucky 25% get the help that they need. So because we have this shredded safety net in our country, now we face these tremendously challenging scenarios, right? What happens when people who are sleeping in encampments and don't have access to hot water or soap face a global pandemic? What happens when millions of people are on the cusp of losing their homes in the middle of a pandemic where our collective health depends on our ability to stay home? So I think if nothing else, this pandemic really drives home the truth that many of us have spoken for many years, that housing is healthcare. And we understand that we cannot contain the virus as long as tens of thousands of people are without homes, and especially if we risk tens of millions of renters losing their homes. Next slide, please. And while the current crises have heightened the threat of eviction for Black and Brown renters, it's certainly not new, right? We've had decades of racist housing policies, from redlining and blockbusting to restrictive covenants, restrictive zoning, that created this yawning wealth gap in our country, where today the average white family holds 12 times the amount of wealth as the average Black family. This disparity has created tremendous racial disparities in our housing system. So Black and Latino people are disproportionately likely to be renters. They're disproportionately likely to be rent burdened. They're disproportionately likely to be homeless. So these inequities caused by systemic racism compound the harm done by COVID-19. So now Black and Native Americans are bearing the brunt of COVID-19 infections and fatalities. Black and Latino workers are bearing the brunt of historic job losses. And now their homes and with it, their ability to keep themselves and their families safe and healthy are at risk. And so these facts both heighten the urgency for action, right? Without significant federal intervention, this wave of evictions that's coming will be made up of predominantly Black and brown renters. But it also, I think, makes really clear our obligation to center racial equity in the response and to center racial equity in the housing needs of COVID-19. We have to make sure that our response certainly doesn't reinforce or exacerbate racial inequities, but that we are using these new housing and homelessness funds to reverse and correct disparities. Next slide, please. So the solutions to all of this, right, are pretty simple, as they always are, even if they're not easy, right? We have to protect, keep alive, and house people who are experiencing homelessness. We have to prevent more people from becoming homeless. And through it all, we have to center racial equity. Next slide, please. So the CARES Act that was passed at the end of March was a good start, and it provided resources to states and localities to protect renters, and in some cases to create rental assistance programs to keep people housed and avoid accruing debt during the pandemic. So there was $4 billion in emergency solutions grants, $5 billion in CDBG, $3 billion for HUD subsidized renters, $150 billion for coronavirus relief fund, which has many, many uses, but some states and communities did carve out some of those funds for rental assistance programs, and limited federal eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. And I should say that although these funds and these protections were not nearly enough, it was a very good step in the right direction. It was far more than we've ever received in a one-time, ever been able to achieve in a one-time spending bill. And these federal eviction moratoriums were unprecedented, but they were limited. Next slide, please. The federal eviction moratoriums were quite limited and protected only about 30% of renters across the country. And then there were state and local eviction moratoriums, sort of this patchwork of policies around the country that protected additional renters. There were those funds from ESG and CDBG, many communities, including in New Jersey, carved out, thanks to your advocacy, right? The governor and mayors carved out some of those funds to create emergency rental assistance programs. So we've been tracking them across the country. There are about 325 at least emergency rental assistance programs that have been created nationally so far. The one thing that these have in common is that they have limited resources to meet overwhelming demand. So about a quarter of these programs have already had to shut down because resources have been depleted. And those eviction moratoriums that were in place are rapidly expiring. The federal eviction moratorium expired last month. The 30-day notice to vacate expired yesterday. There are 30 states now that have no eviction moratoriums whatsoever for low-income renters. You all are fortunate to live in a state where the governor has extended the eviction moratorium, I believe through as far as the end of the year, which is great leadership and a great reflection on all of your advocacy, but we'll need much more, both for the state of New Jersey and for the entire country. Next slide, please. And what we need is also, the good news here is that this wave of evictions is not only entirely predictable, right? We've all been predicting it for 5 months now, but it's also completely preventable. The bad news is that preventing it requires Congress to act, and we have a ways to go there. But the solutions are pretty simple, right? We need more funds for emergency solutions grants so that local communities can work to keep people who are experiencing homelessness safe, healthy, to get them housed as quickly as possible. We need to have a national uniform moratorium on evictions for all renters for non-payment of rent for the duration of the pandemic. The very least the federal government ought to do in the middle of a public health emergency is assure all of us that we're not going to lose our homes in the middle of it. But eviction moratoriums on their own aren't enough because eventually they do expire and they create a cliff, a financial cliff for renters to fall off of when back rent is due and renters are no more able to pay it than they were at the beginning of the pandemic. So we are also calling for at least $100 billion in emergency rental assistance to keep renters stably housed during and after the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the House has passed legislation that includes all of these essential provisions and protections, not just once, but twice. They passed it in the HEROES Act. They passed it again in a standalone bill with all of the housing and homelessness provisions from the HEROES Act. In the Senate, there's multiple bills that have been introduced that have near unanimous Democratic support for these same provisions. And up until those final days when the negotiations over a final bill completely fell apart, Republicans were coming to the table and recognizing that they needed to do something in their state to prevent eviction. So we had been working with and had confirmation from about a dozen Senate Republicans who had spoken to their leadership about the need for eviction moratoriums or emergency rental assistance or both. But unfortunately, those negotiations stalled out and then fell apart, and it's very unclear what happens next. Next slide, please. But what is clear is that the stakes could not be higher than they are right now. And it is clear that without a significant federal intervention, there will be a wave of evictions and a spike in homelessness across the country. And in fact, that wave has already begun in places where eviction moratoriums have expired. And we need to act to prevent it from becoming a tsunami. And we're nearly out of time. The longer it takes for Congress to act, the harder it is to reverse the harm that will be done to families, to children, to communities, and to our entire country. Every day of inaction is putting more low-income people at immediate risk of losing their homes. And when our collective health depends on our ability to stay in our homes, we all have a stake in ensuring that tens of millions of people don't lose theirs. Next slide, please. So I want to end with an image that I think about often. So this picture is from Las Vegas from a few months ago now, when a local homeless shelter had to close its doors because somebody who worked there had contracted COVID-19. And so in response, the city moved all of the people who were experiencing homelessness to this space for them to sleep on concrete slabs outdoors. And again, this is in Las Vegas, and they are literally sleeping in the shadow of dozens of empty hotels. And I think about this image and I share it with all of you because it encapsulates so many things about our country's ongoing failure to respond in any meaningful way to homelessness, about the cruel and often dehumanizing ways that some communities treat people who are experiencing homelessness, and about the work that we have to do towards long-term solutions. Because to end where I started, the immediate housing crisis that we are working to prevent sits on top of a long-standing and pervasive shortage of homes for the lowest income people. We had an affordable housing crisis before COVID-19. We will have it still after COVID-19. And unless, as a country, we are willing to make the kind of substantial and sustained investments in long-term solutions to end homelessness and housing poverty, then we will face this same eviction crisis during the next pandemic, or the next wave of this pandemic, or the next disaster, or even just during the next year, because we will not have solved for the underlying shortage of homes affordable to the lowest income people. And the long-term solutions are also simple, even if they're not easy. We need to build more homes affordable to the lowest income people through programs like the National Housing Trust Fund and through deeply targeted low-income housing tax credits. We need to bridge the gap between what people earn and what rent costs through rental assistance. We need to provide eviction prevention and cash assistance to help people absorb a financial shock and stay housed. Allowing homelessness and housing poverty to exist in our country has always been a public policy choice. And we can choose differently. We have the solutions, we have the data, we certainly as a country have the resources. The only thing we lack, and what we have always lacked, is the political will to fund those solutions at the scale necessary. And maybe in this moment when it's never been more clear that housing is healthcare, maybe this is the moment when we build that political will for long-term solutions at last. And you all are the people to do it with your tremendous advocacy in New Jersey and with partners across the country. So thank you again for having me here today. Thank you for the incredible work that you do, for the advocacy that you do day in and day out in incredibly difficult circumstances with dwindling resources and overwhelming need. You make a difference in people's lives every day, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work of Stacy and Sharon and the whole team. So thanks again for having me.
Diane, we're always honored to have you with us. Thank you so much. Your presentation always gets me. I wrote notes for myself. I've been doing this for years, and I still had things that reminded me I want to do. We do have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind taking them.
Sure.
So one of the concerns that came up is what can we do and how can we address assistance for the undocumented? You know, there's really not a lot of programs that will assist in that respect.
Right. That's such an important question and such an important issue because, of course, so many, not so many, but many of the renters who are at risk of being evicted are so because they are undocumented and not eligible for any resources. And they are in the worst shape right now because a lot of what was available in the CARES Act from unemployment insurance and stimulus checks, you know, they didn't receive anything. There are some of the programs that were funded through the CARES Act, like the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and in some ways the CDBG funds actually can be used to create state and local rental assistance programs that serve undocumented residents. So we have some resources on our website, and I'd be happy, Sharon, to share it with you, and you can share it out with others about which of those resources can be used to assist undocumented renters. You know, we don't sort of share those materials as widely as some others because we want to make sure that they remain, that the eligibility for undocumented people remains. But there actually is some room for states and localities to use some of those resources for that purpose.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, we'd love to share with our members. This picture, I'm just staring at my screen as you've been speaking. It breaks my heart. And we know this has been happening all over the country. What a heck of a picture to end your presentation with. It's like I took a deep breath. It really caught me. You know, here we are with all these empty buildings and, as you said, empty hotels and everybody's sleeping in a parking lot. It just is not the way the United States should be. In New Jersey, we have a situation where, you know, we're very lucky in that our electeds are very supportive of these issues and want to move the HEROES Act and voted for the CARES Act. So what can we do as a New Jerseyan? What can we do to help move other people forward?
So you have a tremendous delegation in New Jersey, most of whom, maybe all of whom, have been champions on these issues for many years. And still, we need to keep the heat on them as well, because it is very true that it is the Senate you know, we are a nonpartisan organization and always have. And the truth is the truth, and that is that Senate Republicans have are the obstacle here to moving forward and to getting a final bill. And so we certainly need to keep pressure on them, and we will, and we are. And it's also true that when negotiations restart, when everybody is back at the table, there needs to be compromise on both sides. And the Democrats won't get everything that they want and everything that's on their list of priorities in this next bill. So we need to make sure that the champions who have been with us from the beginning continue to say these three priorities: eviction moratorium, $100 billion in emergency rental assistance, $11.5 billion in ESG, those stay at the top of the priority list, and that those are non-negotiable. That's where our Democratic friends and our New Jersey delegation can be especially helpful. So continue educating them about the need, continue reaching out to them and staying in touch and sharing information with them to help them make the case with their colleagues and with their leadership about why these solutions are so urgently needed.
Thank you. There were some individual questions that I'll follow up with directly with the people who wrote in that need some assistance. But I also know that we promised you we'd keep you on time today as well. Diane, as always, everything. I always hang on your every word. I love listening to you speak, and we so appreciate everything you do. And I want the people on the phone to know too that the very first assistance that came into New Jersey for our shelters and for those who were in crisis came in through the National Low Income Housing Coalition. We were given a grant that we got out to all of you to help with some immediate expenses that you had with needing extra PPE and needing food and some extra materials, beds, pillows, blankets, everything in the shelters. And that money came in right away. Diane was on top of it. National Low Income Housing Coalition was right there asking, what do people need? And that was something we were able to bring out to all of you. So Diane, thank you for that publicly. I know we said thank you to you privately, but thank you for that publicly. It really did help quite a few of our members get some things going very quickly when no one had any extra money put aside. We know how tight things are for nonprofits. So that was greatly appreciated and not thought of by most places. So we really, it's great to have someone leading the national organization that understands what we're doing on the ground. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate all you and your staff do. Thank you, Diane.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Thanks so much for your tremendous work. And thanks so much for the partnership. Good luck with the rest of your event. Enjoy.
Thank you. We'll be in touch with you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Nina, so we're going to, Senator Booker, if anybody has been watching television, could have a second career. I think he could be the new Oprah. He did a little roundtable discussion the other night on television. He was really very good asking questions and keeping the conversation going, although we'd very much like to keep him as our U.S. Senator. Thank you very much. So I wanted to introduce that he was willing to be on today. Unfortunately, his schedule did not allow for it, but he did send us a video that he put together, and we do have his staffer, his legislative aide that deals with housing issues that's been on several of our member calls, Caitlin McGinnis, who will be on right after the video. So Nina, if you would show the video, please.
Hello to the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, and thank you for your advocacy here in your virtual Congressional Day. The work you do is vital to the very ideas of America. We say home of the brave. Well, critically necessary for this nation in every way to be who we say we are is to make sure that everyone has a quality home. And right now we have too many people who are struggling to afford just that. From folks who are still struggling in homelessness to people who are rent insecure and paying so much of their income in rent. We must do more as a nation and have policies down in Washington, D.C. that reflect this urgency. That is the center of your advocacy and your mission, and I stand with you. I'm here because of housing advocates. When my family was turned away from homes in New Jersey because of the color of their skin, it was activists in this space that allowed my family to thrive in the state I now get to represent. In addition to that, I started as a low-income tenants lawyer when I left law school and saw the greatness and the grit and the goodness of all those who work to make sure other Americans have homes. I believe in your mission. I stand with you in this cause. And God willing, together, we can make this nation live up to its promise, live up to its ideals, so that everybody in their home can have life and liberty and indeed pursue their happiness. Thank you.
So Nina, would you put it back to regular screen? And we have Caitlin McGinnis with us. As I said, I just want to make sure everybody knows this before Caitlin comes on, or if she's coming onto the screen. Senator Booker has been our state senator since 2013. And before that, he was the mayor of Newark for 7 years. And he's definitely been a leader in the fight for fair housing, police reform, and has pushed for economic reforms to address wealth inequality in the U.S., particularly the racial wealth gap. He's been a fighter for housing justice since he first came to Newark as a tenant rights lawyer, as he just said. And Caitlin is here with us. Caitlin and the senator have been very generous with their time and their efforts for us, and they have been on several of our weekly calls that we hold for our members. And we're very, very pleased to have Caitlin with us. So Caitlin, if you want to pop on screen. I know she's there. She is. I knew she was there. Caitlin, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to just say anything as a follow-up of what the senator is working on right now. And then we'll ask you a couple questions, okay?
Great. Good morning. Thank you for having me. The senator was very sorry that he couldn't join in person. This is a group he always loves connecting with because, as he said, you know, housing is not just at the core of his career, but is central to his own personal story. And the network and all of your members have always been really important partners and great friends to us. And we've always relied on all of your collective expertise and advocacy when crafting legislation like the Home Act or the Tenant Protection Act. And that partnership is now more important than ever as we're facing, you know, as Diane said, a severe housing crisis due to COVID. So thanks so much for having me. And I look forward to hearing from all of you and continuing to hear from all of you directly over the next coming days and weeks, just to keep us informed about what you're all seeing on the ground.
So I have to laugh at that because you know that everybody's really good about making sure that you hear from them directly. We
Yes,
get
that has
questions
never
out
been
to
a
you.
problem with the network. We're all terrific at that.
We do try to make sure that you hear from us and know what our members are saying. We do have someone that did put a comment in here that it was great to hear from Senator Booker. So I want you to share that information back with him, if you would please, that we so appreciate it. We know what he's doing and, you know, to fight for this. I'm going to ask you the same question that I was asking before. What can we do? We already have our 2 U.S. senators who are, you know, fighting this for us, and they're doing it from the right issues and on the right issues. So what can we do to help move things forward? What would help the senator?
You know, I think it's so important for us to continue to hear from you folks about what you're seeing on the ground. You know, that's really what gives us our marching orders and lets us know what our priorities should be, you know, as we're fighting for this next legislative package. We want to know how all of this is impacting New Jerseyans. And, you know, we so appreciate your advocacy. You know, obviously we desperately need more federal assistance, and we need congressional action. And, you know, we really appreciate your partnership and pushing for that.
Thank you. So I know there were some questions here about when the money comes in from the federal government and then comes to the state. The question, and I don't want to answer it, I want to give those other people, how prescribed is that? How predetermined before it gets here is that money? You know, is it very flexible within the state, or is it really very, you know, direct in the way it comes in from the federal government? You know, people hear that this big billions come in or whatever, and then they say, oh, well, billions came in, I should be able to get that money. And it's not really, you know, like just sitting there and saying, okay, I'll throw some money this way and that way. So do Can you address that a little more clearly than I can?
So, that's a good question, and in often cases it can be really dependent on the program, and a lot of things will be very dependent on the how the negotiations finally shake out, which obviously are very fluid at this point. But I will say that direct assistance for states and localities is one of the senator's very top priorities for the next package, so that the state of New Jersey and municipalities of all sizes have that flexibility to use that funding in a way that, their local community needs.
And, as I said before, what can we do? Does it help for us to have sign-on letters so he can say, we've got this much support on this issue? Or does it help for him to log emails and phone calls coming in? We do those things, but we want to make sure we're doing them and that it's helpful.
If there is a sign-on letter that we are not on, that the senator should be, I would definitely love to hear about it. And, we always appreciate hearing from New Jerseyans on what our priorities should be.
Terrific. If anybody else has any questions, I see there's some specific questions and we will try to address those. This is an overview comment. People are asking about their specific situation, so I'm not going to give those to you, Caitlin. We're going to try to answer those specifically, but we do know that
I know your time is limited, but if you have really specific questions you want to send me, I'm happy to follow up with folks offline.
I know you are. Thank you. You always say that, and we always appreciate it. And we appreciate you always making time for us. And please thank the senator for us. We do know he's fighting for us and he's doing everything he can to make sure that money comes back to New Jersey and gets here to help those who are in need. And thanks for being flexible with your time this morning. I know we were texting before we started. So we appreciate you being with us. And again, please thank the senator for us and let us know what we need to do to help him, help you to move things forward. Okay?
Will do. Thanks for having me and thanks for organizing, Sharon.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So Nina, we have a message from Bonnie Watson Coleman, our Congresswoman. If you would cue that up. She has served as the U.S. Representative for New Jersey's 12th Congressional District since 2015. She previously served in the New Jersey General Assembly from 1998 to 2015, where she led the fight for legislation to address affordable homes and the needs of low-income residents. She's been a great friend to the network and our members in her district. As an example of her leadership, she is the sponsor of the Moving Forward Act, which proposes $100 billion to construct and preserve 1.8 million affordable homes. And we have a brief video from her, and then we have her senior policy analyst who will be with us. So if you want to put that on, Nina, thank you. And I will turn my screen off.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, and I'm sorry that I can't join you live for your Congressional Day meetings today, but I did want to make sure that you received a message from me as an ally in the fight for high quality, affordable housing for all of our families. The pandemic has magnified the issues that we already knew existed, pointing out the drastic gaps in economic and financial security for all of our families, especially families of color. We've talked a lot about emergency solutions to the housing crisis over the past couple of months. But that sad truth is that for many families, COVID-19 was just another crisis. Whether it was this or a sudden illness or just a layoff, in more normal times, too many Americans are living on the brink. We have proven that the government can have people's backs, and it's a lesson we need to take beyond this crisis. We need to be invested in making sure that families are not permanently wondering whether they'll afford rent next month. This is also a moment for us to think about resetting our policy expectations more broadly. We have to do more to ensure equal access to the kinds of housing that are close to schools, close to jobs, close to transportation, and other markers of economic progress. We need to implement the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule, which would require the federal, state, and local governments to actively promote access to quality housing across racial divides, something Carson and the Trump administration postponed. HUD needs to proactively investigate housing discrimination, and so much more. I firmly believe that where you live determines much of your life, your access to education, to clean air, to transportation, to jobs and opportunities. The federal government hasn't done enough to make sure homes that meet these criteria are available to everyone, and it is time for that to change. Thanks for your advocacy and work in making sure that that happens.
We always appreciate Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman and all of the work that she's done for so long. I have worked with her when she was with the New Jersey Assembly, and we have all worked very closely with her. She's been a very strong advocate for us, for all of our issues. It's been wonderful to have her right here with us, as we move along, always available to us and always fighting for us. And we are very lucky to have on the line with us today Liz Lee, who is her senior policy analyst. So Liz, if you would turn on your camera and open your microphone. You're muted. We would love to have you online for a minute if you could. I know she's there because I can see it on my screen. There she is.
Hello.
Hi, Liz. So why don't you, if you have a couple of things you'd like to say for the Congresswoman? No, we can't hear you yet, Liz. Seems that every system has something a little different. I unmuted you, Liz. Let's see.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think I had the privilege to do that. But hello, everyone. So great to see everybody here, and thank you to Sharon, Arnold, and Nina, the team, doing really, really important work out there during this time, as everyone knows. Unfortunately, the Congresswoman could not make it today, but she sent me because I am her senior policy advisor, managing housing. As many of you probably already know, the Congresswoman is a member of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee in the House. So this is incredibly important, especially because our committee has been stepping up and doing the work during this pandemic to make sure that all the New Jerseyans out there have the really important housing that they need during this pandemic. So as and then as the Congresswoman said, it shouldn't be this way, right? But like where you live fundamentally impacts your quality of life, your health, the other environmental factors, access to jobs, access to public transportation to get to where you need to go, whether it's the doctor or even buying food, right? Because we also know that there are a lot of food deserts out there. So having affordable housing in every community is incredibly important. And that, fundamentally is what we mean when we talk about fair housing, right? Being able to live and choose to live where you want to, and being able to thrive there and raise a family. So I'm not sure. Are we doing questions? I want to make sure that folks are not putting questions in the chat, and we're missing that. But did want to address any of those issues there. Did also kind of want to give a quick update. Obviously, there are a lot of Americans out there who are still out of a job. We know that unemployment benefits have exhausted for a lot of people, or there are folks who are on their way to exhausting their unemployment benefits,
Mhm.
and the pandemic bump that Congress previously approved for was not extended, right? Because the Senate could not come to a decision, and so the Congresswoman takes this very seriously. That's something we're working on because we know that without income, a lot of people will be behind on rent, and of course in many states, including New Jersey, right, there are moratoriums on evictions, et cetera. But we also know that unfortunately, while there are moratoriums, the there are numerous landlords that continue to file motions, right, for them to go through whenever the eviction courts start opening up again. And so we know that that's a very real concern, and that is something that we're working very hard on. But it's very difficult to negotiate with folks who refuse to negotiate. Um, so that's kind of where we are. I know that last time we met, we were talking about some legislative solutions that the Congresswoman and many of her colleagues have put together for eviction relief and for rent relief. Again, unfortunately, we are just not getting cooperation from folks to move this forward. But I want to let folks know that this is something that the Congresswoman cares a lot about, and we are fighting for it every day.
Liz, actually, you answered the question before it was even asked. You're very good at that. So that was one of the questions that came in, is about the unemployment relief and what was going to happen and where we stood going forward. Actually, I think you covered the two questions that we had, which is terrific, but you usually do.
I
You
try.
anticipate, you know what calls you're getting in the office too, so I know
Right,
you've already addressed them. So I realized that the Congresswoman had another commitment today and could not be with us. So and sent the lovely video, and we appreciate that. So I know your schedule is crazy too. I'm trying to move everybody along with respecting their time. So I am going to just thank you very much for being with us today. Please thank the Congresswoman for us. She's always such an advocate for all of the housing issues and really addressing basic needs. Never far from her thoughts. We know that she's always thinking about those issues of food, childcare, health, having a home, and can you afford those homes, and are you in a safe community? So please thank her for us. And we appreciate you being here with us today, Liz. Thank
Yeah,
you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye. I think I was surprised here that I think I heard Congressman Pascrell's voice. And if
Yes.
he is on the okay, so we're going to switch to Congressman Pascrell. Thank you, Congressman. I know you're not feeling so well today, but we're very, very pleased you're with us. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do a little intro so everyone on the phone knows. Nina, can you switch it?
I'm honored to be with you folks. I think my record will show that this didn't just come upon me. I've been involved in housing since I was the mayor of Paterson, New Jersey, and we have provided in three big shots in three different times an entire removal of old housing, old apartments, to build new townhouses for folks in Paterson. The last $24 million project, which was in the Riverside section of town where I live, it's only 5 blocks away. We have succeeded in demolition for all of the apartment buildings. They're going to be building beautiful townhouses, and it's going to change the whole neighborhood, and we're all looking forward to it and all excited about it. And I'm glad we're having this meeting, and I hope you are staying safe, everybody. I appreciate the organization's commitment to promoting economic justice and the empowerment of our low-income communities. The need for affordable housing is vast, despite what the President of the United States says. But we're not going to, in any manner, shape, or form, honor his ignorance. This pandemic has drastically exacerbated the need for housing assistance. You are at the forefront of helping people at risk of losing their homes, becoming homeless, And thank you for the work that you do. I know the work that you do, day in and day out. I've been working around the clock to ensure that all people can continue to have a roof over their head. Remember, food, shelter, that's the basics. In March, we passed the CARES Act to provide funds to prevent homelessness and a temporary moratorium on evictions and foreclosures. As a result, I announced in the 9th District of New Jersey that we had received over $3 million in federal housing grants. This money will be used by public housing authorities to help families secure safe housing and prevent the spread of COVID-19. There are consequences if we don't do this and if we don't do enough. The need has only grown. The House passed the HEROES Act in May to provide over $100 billion in emergency rental assistance. It is needed. It is not a figment of anyone's imagination. It's necessary. And our bill, which we passed, extends the national moratorium on evictions and foreclosures. It allocates $11.5 billion in federal funding to help those experiencing what I would call at-risk homelessness. The bill included $5 billion also for community development block grants. So the HEROES Act, I think is, we passed it so long ago in the House, and of course Mitch, the majority leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, he refuses to bring it up, to give it a shot, and let the debate ensue on the floor of the Senate. So we saw this coming. We've made some compromises in trying to deal in negotiations. It includes also the HEROES Act, included the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. I co-sponsored that. This would enhance the low-income housing tax credit to encourage building more affordable housing across North Jersey and, of course, the entire country. Unfortunately, McConnell has stalled this for 102 days. That's right. Time flies.
Mhm.
Negotiations with the White House are bleak because Republicans, a memo on Tuesday, August the 25th, the call with Housing and Community Development Network at 11. We saw that the negotiators would rather let Americans suffer, states bleed into bankruptcy, economic calamity continue, instead of negotiating in good faith to address the needs of the American people. We know that Trump's excuse for an executive order on housing does little to nothing to address housing needs in America. It's a distraction. It's not worth the paper it's written on. So I'm not going to give up. I know the American people need help from the twin threats of this horrible pandemic and the consequent economic collapse. And these crises have exacerbated our historic and ongoing economic and racial divisions. And all of you have today are engaged in the righteous struggle for justice and equality, as my brother John Lewis always said. He was my good friend. It begins with everyone having a roof over their heads. I'm going to continue to fight like heck to ensure that my fellow New Jerseyans and everyone in the country is guaranteed that opportunity. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Try to anyway. But I want you to know I'm with you 100%. And I'll be back fighting in here in September. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go again. We got work to do, and we got to get it done now.
Congressman, we can't thank you enough for all that you've been doing. And we know you work very closely with one of our board members' organizations, with Bob Garashi
Yes.
in Patterson of NJCDC. And we appreciate all you've done with the organization. And I don't know if everybody knows it, but the work that the congressman did helped to get Patterson's Great Falls named as part of the national park system. We've got some amazing things that he's done with the environment as well as with housing, and appreciate all you do, Congressman. My question for you is something I'm trying to ask everyone is, what can we do to help you? What can we do to help move this forward? What do you want from us?
That's a great question, because I think that's really the bottom line question on any issue. I mean, you can read about it, you could study it, but what are you going to do? What did you do when you saw that there was a big gap and which needed to be filled on any issue? And right now we're talking about housing. Well, the president's answer to that, so our job is going to be more difficult, but the president's answer to that was, oh, I'm going to protect the suburbs from those people moving there. I mean, that's a good beginning, isn't it? We're in the United States of America. We're in the 20th century. And with all the work that my brother John Lewis did, if this is the capping point, then we're in bigger trouble than we thought. So when you divide people, you never get anything solved. So I think we need to address that. I think those folks in the inner city, that I live in, what could be called Patterson Center, the center of the city, I think that we've got to speak out against any attempt to divide Americans even more than they are divided. And to use housing as a tool to do this is sick. I can't think of any other word. I'm going to do everything I can to stop that. But what you could be doing, and if you feel comfortable, and if you feel that you can do this without in any way putting yourself into the middle of a jam of some sort, you have to speak out as well. We got to get people to have a roof over their heads. That's our objective, because that's the basic need besides food, is shelter. So we got to look at this in a fundamental way, and that's how I'm prepared to look at it.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you very much, Congressman.
God bless everybody, and I'm very proud of all of you.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you do for us, and thank you for jumping on the call. Again, I know you weren't feeling well today, so I appreciate you jumping on with us and spending some time with us. And we will let you get to your next call. I've been hearing your phone ring as you were talking to us, so obviously some people want to
Always
talk
ringing.
to you. Thank you, Congressman. You have a wonderful day.
Take care of yourself.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I think we've gone a little bit out of order here, but I think we have Claire. I'm not sure if you're on.
Hi, yes, I am. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, we can. So we're going to
great.
show the message that we got from the congressman, and then we'll go to you if you have anything you want to add. And this is Congressman Sears. This is Claire. I'm going to mess up your last name. Plashy?
Don't worry. Plashy. That was actually very close.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good. I try very hard, but I don't always get them. The congressman has been serving in the U.S. representative as a U.S. representative for New Jersey's 8th congressional district since 2006, and before that, he served as the Speaker of the Assembly from 2002 to 2006, and Mayor of West New York for 10 years. Congressman has worked to prevent foreclosures, is a sponsor of H.R. 7301, the Emergency Housing Protections and Relief Act, which passed the House and leads ongoing efforts to ensure that the large immigrant community in the district is protected during this pandemic. We will see a video now, and then Claire will be with us to answer any questions or to give any other comments. So Nina, you're on.
I had it all queued up and there was an issue. I'll try to pull it up now if maybe Claire speak for a little bit and then I'll see if we can get it.
Okay, you mind doing that, Claire? Just
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally fine.
thank you.
So my name's Claire. I'm the Congressman's legislative director. I've been with him for 5 years now. And during that time, I have handled housing, and we actually have a new staffer who is coming. She just started last week. So I will make sure to share her contact info, but she's taking over the housing portfolio. Her name is Jaya. She's coming to us from Klobuchar's office. So she's bringing a new perspective to the Jersey group. But I am from New Jersey. You know, the congressman's background, affordable housing is incredibly important to him. As a mayor of a very diverse town that has seen its property prices skyrocket in the last, 20 years, the need for affordable housing in those areas is extremely important to him. He came as a refugee as a child from Cuba, and he spent the rest of his life in West New York. And for him, if it had cost as much as it does now, his family never would have been able to live there. So it's personal to him, especially for the immigrant community in the district. The 8th district is over 40% foreign born, so extremely diverse, which means that there's a lot of diverse needs as well. Since he was a mayor, he really is a big advocate for the community development block grant program, as well as the home program, programs to help address unique needs in different communities. And earlier, Caitlin was talking about, how flexible funding is and if it's already allocated. And the CDBG program is one of those ones where it helps communities address their individual needs because it is so flexible and can be used on a vast array of different projects. So, he's constantly fighting for that program to receive funding. The Trump administration has tried to eliminate it every single time they have put out a budget. He spoke on the budget committee about the importance of it, and it was the director of his name is acting director Vote, and he claimed that it was not a useful program, which actually brought cries out from Republicans on the committee as well. So it's a bipartisanly supported program because a lot of these mayors know how useful it is in their districts. So, I mean, if the congressman's video will go into a little bit more depth, but just wanted to, let you guys know that he is fighting for affordable housing since the beginning of the pandemic. He has supported plans, including Chairwoman Maxine Waters' plan, which included the rental assistance, the homeowners assistance, moratoriums on foreclosures and evictions. And so that has been the plan that he's been pushing for the beginning, and he will continue to do that as we negotiate further response bills. So if there's any questions,
the video is queued up. We can do that, and then I do have a couple questions, and we can do that right after. Okay?
Great.
Nina, you want to put the video on? Terrific.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in today's virtual Congressional Day. I apologize that I can't be with you live, but my office is here to any questions you may have. I am proud to represent the 8th Congressional District in New Jersey, where I have seen firsthand the impact the housing programs can have on communities. I would like to thank the Housing and Community Development Network for this event and for all the work they do to provide quality, affordable housing for those who need it the most. Across the country. The economic fallout has left millions without jobs and a fear that they won't be able to afford to stay in their homes. During a time when staying home is key to the public health of our nation, people should not have to worry about being evicted or foreclosed on. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I have supported plans to prevent foreclosures and evictions for the duration of the crisis and provide funding to support those who need assistance to stay in their homes. The House of Representatives has taken steps to prevent eviction foreclosures by passing the Emergency Housing Protection and Relief Act. This bill extends the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures and create funds to help renters and homeowners. This is simply one of the steps of what will need to be a multifaceted response that protects immigrants, low-income families, and all those who are struggling. I will continue to fight for those who need protection, as well as programs that improve access to quality, affordable housing and support communities that are working to improve the lives of their residents. Once again, I want to thank you for all your hard work to protect and provide for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, for making sure we had a video from the congressman today. And I'm just going to leave it at that since you already spoke. And I think you covered the two questions that I have here that were sent in. But we appreciate all his efforts. And again, if there's anything we as a group or as an organization or as individuals can do to help move things along or to share information, please, get in touch with us. We can get it out to the members. We can get it out to the attendees today. And we can, share that information out throughout our statewide network. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all your work. You guys are the ones on the ground, and we would not be able to be effective without you. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Claire. Please thank the congressman for us.
I will.
Okay. I think at this point we're back on schedule. Yes, we are. Alicia Mazzara, and why don't I let her come on screen as I do an introduction here from the Center for Budget Policy Priorities, Senior Research Analyst. The Center for Budget Priorities is a progressive American think tank that since 1981 has analyzed the impact of federal and state government budget policies. Alicia is a senior research analyst in the housing division. And prior to joining the center in 2015, she was a policy advisor in Third Way's economic program, where her research centered on income inequality, labor market dynamics, and workforce development. At the center, she works on issues related to federal low-income housing policy and will discuss how on racial justice and plays a key role in housing policy. So we're very happy you're with us today, Alicia. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great, wonderful. All right, well, thank you for having me today. As Sharon mentioned, I'm a senior research analyst at the Center on Budget. The Center on Budget's also been doing for several years sort of an ongoing process to work on integrating racial equity more into our policy work as well as our organizational practices. And so that's something that I've been involved with for the last few years. And so I'm going to try and give you all a bit of historical context on the long and often racist history of housing policy in our country and how it ultimately is manifested today. I'm going to preface this by saying that, I know some things. I am not an expert on this history. I know that there are probably folks on this call whose lived experience really is this history. But I want to share a little bit about how we at the center are kind of thinking about and grappling with and connecting history to our policy work. And I think it will hopefully be helpful to you when you are making your advocacy arguments to sort of ground the work that you are doing now in the bigger historical context and in the bigger fight for racial equity. Given the limited amount of time, this is going to be really high level. I also want to say that this presentation owes a huge debt to two books that I really recommend if you're interested you read: The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein and How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. And since people have literally written entire books about this, if any of this is new to you or surprising, I really encourage you to continue learning on your own. So next slide, please. All right, so I want to start by grounding us in a definition. And so this definition is from Dr. Kendi, and it is: racism is the marriage of racist policies and racist ideas that produces and normalizes racial inequalities. And I really like this definition here because it really makes clear the role of policy and the fact that policy is actually a driver here. It's not that policy comes after we've created racial inequalities. It is really part of the problem, and therefore it needs to be part of the solution. I know other folks have mentioned this on the call, but the other reason I really like this definition is because I think sometimes we think about racism as a thing that's between two people, or someone, calls someone a slur, or, won't serve someone in a place of business, but it's so much bigger than that. And we are, I think, finally at a point in our national discourse where we're really talking about the term structural or systemic racism. And this is what this definition is trying to get at. It's the idea that regardless of any one individual's actions, there is a bigger fabric of inequality that is baked into the systems in our society. So I'm going to talk about some of these historical policies that got us here, but know that this is just, I'm talking about stuff that happened in the 20th century, but you could connect this all the way back to the founding of our country, right? The fact that our country is founded on stolen land and has benefited from the labor of enslaved people. So this is just a snapshot of a much bigger arc here. I also want to preface this next slide by saying that there are pictures in this slide that I think we would find offensive today. But I wanted to share them because I think it's really important that we look at history through a critical lens. So the way we live now, we often take for granted, is just the result of people's choices about preferences about where they live and the types of neighborhoods they want to be in. And that any effort to change that is quote unquote social engineering. And that is so far from the truth, right? We live in neighborhoods that are largely segregated by race and income by intentional design, by a litany of policy choices that got us here, and often took what were once racially integrated neighborhoods and intentionally segregated them and then starved them of resources. And so I have a few examples of how that happened here. The first little clip up top is a snippet from a race-based covenant. So these denied people who weren't white from living or owning property in certain neighborhoods. So you couldn't buy or sell to people who weren't white. And as you can see in the language here, not only were these largely racist, they were often anti-Semitic as well. The little square picture here talks about blockbusting. So blockbusting was a practice of basically real estate agents and speculators exploiting racist fears among white homeowners to tell them, well, a black family moved in and your property prices are going to go down, you better leave. Would convince people to sell their homes at a loss, and then the agent could turn around and jack that price way up and sell it at a huge markup to middle-class black families who faced a lot of barriers to homeownership already. And finally, this third picture, I just want to make clear that often the code of ethics for real estate agents at the time would enshrine the idea that we should be segregating people by race. Next slide, please. So the most notorious example, and the one you've probably heard of and people have mentioned already on this call, is redlining. So this takes a historical map of redline parts of New Jersey, particularly you can see Newark and Jersey City in here, and it overlays it over sort of present day geography. So if you don't know what redlining is, in the early part of the century, people couldn't just afford homes because there was nothing like a 30-year mortgage. So you had to have a lot of cash up front. So very few people could actually make that happen. So as lending became more widely available and therefore increased access to homeownership, the Federal Housing Administration had to decide what are the criteria for lending to people. And they used maps that were designating areas as creditworthy or credit risks. And of course, in creating these maps, the assessment was made based largely on the race of people in the neighborhood and not on their ability to actually pay a home loan. And so areas that were predominantly occupied by African Americans and to a lesser extent other racial and ethnic and religious minorities were deemed as not creditworthy. And this decision ultimately starved these neighborhoods of investment for decades. And so the FHA would also not insure mortgages in integrated neighborhoods or even white neighborhoods that they considered too close to black neighborhoods, thus continuing to drive racial segregation. So I want you to sort of kind of look at this map and kind of hold the colors. The red and the mustard color are the considered undesirable areas by the FHA at the time. Hold this in your mind as we go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a present day color coding of the map using the share of people of color. And so it's showing how densely concentrated people of color are in Newark and Jersey City. And what you can see here is that the purple areas where people are most concentrated are largely the same as those red and yellow areas you saw on the map before. So what this is showing us is that racial segregation is so durable that maps drawn almost 100 years ago are still shaping where people live today. And this is important because as we go to the next slide, what you will see is we have an overlay of poverty rates on the same map. And you can see that again, oh, yeah, thank you. In our country, separate means unequal. And so what that means is not only have these neighborhoods been segregated by race, but we also see that there are long-term effects around the types of resources that these neighborhoods have been able to have access to. So what is the outcome of all of this? Next slide, please. So what we see is wealth, which is most people build through homeownership, is hugely, hugely concentrated in the hands of white households, okay? And so what that means is that everybody else is much more economically vulnerable. They don't have so much of a cushion, and this is particularly true in the face of an economic downturn. Next slide. And so what, as other folks have mentioned on this call, what we see here is the outcome of sort of a long history as well as present day policies that are racist and discriminatory against people of color, particularly Black, Latino, and Indigenous people, has resulted in these folks being more likely to be renters. They are more likely to work in lower wage jobs that have been especially hard hit by this recession, and they are more likely, unsurprisingly, to be struggling to pay the rent right now. And you can see that really clearly in this chart. And as Diane has mentioned, we know that an eviction crisis is really just homelessness crisis, which is a health crisis, and we're already in a health crisis. And we know that access to clean water and being able to social distance is so important right now. And if people do not have a roof over their heads, we run the risk of having even more people get sick. And unfortunately, what we're also seeing is because of all of these longstanding policies and inequalities, who gets sick and who dies at a higher rate of COVID is also very much shaped by race because of all these historical past decisions. So next slide, please. All right, so folks have talked about this a bunch on the call, which is great. So, you know, as we know, where you live shapes so many important factors. To the extent where we are now seeing studies showing that segregation is really driving health and economic disparities that we see today between different racial groups. So I just want to underscore, neighborhoods would not matter if these resources were equitably distributed. It wouldn't matter where you lived if everywhere had a good school, if everywhere had clean drinking water, if everywhere had a grocery store and a good hospital. So we are in the situation we are today because of all these past decisions. So next slide, please. So I don't have time to go into all the different policy recommendations that the center has, and they're largely in line with what many of your representatives are working towards, as well as what the National Low-Income Housing Coalition has spoken about. So what I wanted to give you instead was a broader framework to use to think about when I am thinking about policies that I want to advocate for, what should I be thinking about and how should I be evaluating them? And that's a lens that we're trying to apply in our work as well. So we believe that if racist policies got us here, then we need anti-racist policies to undo the harm that has been created. And so while this presentation has been largely about racial equity, we also want to be mindful about other forms of equity in terms of gender or sexual orientation or disability status. And so trying to think about what are policies that really advance equity for all of these different people who have different barriers that they face. We also really want to think about, in a world of scarce resources, we want to target aid to those most in need. That is the most effective thing with a limited amount of resources. And what I really want to underscore here, number 3, is we need to think about outcomes over intentions. You could have someone have an idea for a policy that they want to be one that creates equity, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it will. Conversely, we've had lots of policies that have never been explicitly racist that have created racial inequality. So we really need to look at outcomes, not just intentions. All right, so last slide. All right, so Hopefully you guys will have access slides after for all these different resources. This is just the tip of the iceberg of stuff in this space. There is so much here. But what I really hope today is giving you is to sort of pull all these different things that folks have been talking about today into this bigger framework around history and how policy is so key to achieving racial equity, and that we cannot pursue effective solutions to the housing problems today if we do not reckon with our past. So I'll close it there. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, so much information, fabulous information. We got to thank you immediately into the comments box. It says so many thanks to Alicia for providing education on structural racism. And I know you have so much more you could say about it. And actually what I'm going to ask you right now is if we can get in touch with you about being one of the speakers for one of the workshops at our conference in October. I just think you have so much to share that people want to hear about right now and have a better understanding. And I know your schedule is tight, but we will definitely reach out and check your schedule and your timing and see if that works. Our conference is the 15th and 16th of October for anybody who's on the phone and doesn't know that. Alicia, I wouldn't even know where to start with questions because I want to ask you about 20.
I know it's such a huge, rich area, really. Yeah.
It really is, and it's the gist of the whole issue right now, and the have and have-nots, and the need for addressing equity and equality throughout everything that we're doing throughout the country. But definitely, we look at that very seriously here for New Jersey. So, like I said, I'm going to just ask you if we can have you back.
Sure. Yeah. Let's be in touch.
Okay. Terrific. Alicia, thank you so much. And again, as the commenter here said, it's really important to provide the information on structural racism and educate us and educate all of us of how we can address things in a better way and be more conscious of decisions and the way we approach different issues. So we appreciate your time today. I know we've heard you before through National Low Income Housing Coalition, and Arnold immediately said, we've got to get Alicia. So we wanted you to know that you were right up there on the top of our list of someone we wanted on here today. So folks, anyone who's on here today and is interested, Alicia's going to be back in October. So look for a workshop with her at our conference. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.
So I am going to go, I believe we have Erica Calderon on here, and we have Senator Bob Menendez sent us a lovely message. Hi, Erica. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of the senator and we'll show his video. He has served as our U.S. Senator since 2016. Before that, he was a member of the House of Representatives from 93 to 2006. As a member of the United States Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, Senator Menendez has been a leading voice for policies to address increased consumer protection and corporate accountability, fairness in lending, affordable housing, and comprehensive approaches to community revitalization. He sponsored the Homeowners Assistance Fund, $75 billion to provide flexible resources directly to state housing finance agencies, or the NJHMFA, so they can help households, both homeowners and renters, struggling due to the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to remain in their homes. And he's been a great friend to the network, and there's absolutely no doubt there. And recently included our senior policy advisor, Arnold Cohen, at his press conference, calling for Senate action to address the need for federal funding to address the COVID crisis. We've got a brief message, and then we have Erica here for a few minutes with us. So Nina, if you would put on the message, we appreciate it. Oh, he's upside down. So maybe we're going to have Erica speak while we get the senator off his head. Nina, you need a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Erica, why don't you go ahead first, and then we'll go there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi there, my name is Erica Calderon. I'm Senator Menendez's legislative assistant for housing issues in his DC office. I've been in the office for 2 years now. I'm sad to say I'm not from New Jersey. but I've definitely gotten to know many New Jerseyans in the last couple of years, so I feel a special connection to the state. But as Senator Menendez will likely talk about in his video, he is, sorry, one second, I'm getting technical issues. Give me 1 second. From the beginning of the pandemic, he has focused on providing housing to New Jerseyans. New Jersey was one of the most affected states in the pandemic. It continues to be one of the most affected states in the pandemic. People have lost jobs, can't pay rent. 5 months of rent have passed since the start of the pandemic, and Congress has still been unable to pass rental assistance. The senator is a co-sponsor of Senator Brown's rental assistance bill that provides $100 billion in assistance to New Jerseyans, to renters in the United States, including New Jerseyans. And that is vitally important in a pandemic where you are encouraged to stay at home for your safety and the safety of others. If you don't have a home, that not only contributes to economic instability, that also contributes to a furthering of the pandemic. And it's something the senator has always been focused on from the beginning of this pandemic, is to ensure people have homes. We took a long time to recover, New Jersey took a long time to recover from the financial crisis. It seems this is going to be worse if Congress doesn't address it. And he's really pushing to make sure rental assistance and homeownership assistance is included in the next package. In particular, what he's also working on is a housing counseling bill. So a lot of homeowners don't have access to assistance or don't have the knowledge of how to negotiate forbearance or certain payments to help during the pandemic. And housing counselors can help homeowners stay in their homes and renters stay in their homes as well by providing the assistance and the knowledge to stay in their homes. Those are his focuses right now. And again, the rental assistance is really where Congress needs to act. We have a bill there. It's passing the HEROES Act, as you've heard previously throughout the presentations. This is really what we need to pass. And honestly, it passed the House of Representatives, and it needs to pass the Senate. And the senator is working to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Erica. It looks like we're going to continue to have some trouble with the video, but we're going to try one more time. Nina's going to try to play it now. Still upside down, Nina. So for some reason, it's not working.
Okay, hold on. Just hold on a second. We're going to play it this way.
Okay.
Hold on. I apologize, folks. Just bear with me just a moment.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I don't know how quickly she's going to start, but one of the things that came up is there's a question, and we know it's not the answer to everything, but some people are very interested in addressing the homeless issues or the need for shelters with tiny homes or turf sheds or trailers for emergency housing. Is there anything in any of the bills that are happening right now that are addressing, bringing in trailers or bringing in, the temporary type housing or even long-term tiny homes?
So I know it's something that's been popular for a couple of years now, but there's nothing that I'm aware of in either package that has that type of feature. I know FEMA famously uses trailers for displaced people during natural disasters, but there's nothing in regarding tiny homes in either of the packages that I'm aware of, at least.
Okay, one of the reasons we ask is that picture that Diane Yentel showed of people sleeping in a parking lot on sleeping bags before because the shelter had to be closed or was full, and you have other places around. So that might be something that can be looked at. FEMA does use it, and it might be a temporary answer. So we're going to try the video again here. So Nina, you want to give it a shot?
Okay, here we go.
Stacy Berger and Arnold Coleman for inviting me to share a few words with you today. The Housing and Community Network of New Jersey has always been an important partner to me. And our work together is even more critical right now amid a pandemic that has devastated our economy and left too many families on the verge of losing their homes. In New Jersey, the situation is especially dire. It took us years to build back from the foreclosure crisis, and now we run the risk of seeing all of our hard-fought progress erased. A recent census survey found that nearly 30% of New Jersey residents either missed their July housing payment or said they were unsure whether they could make their August payments. And New Jersey now leads the country in FHA mortgage delinquency rates. Nationwide, more than 20 million Americans are at risk of eviction. And once again, Black and brown families are being hit the hardest. Democrats have understood the urgent need for action from day one. And yet, Senate Republican leadership and the White House have spent months denying the severity of the COVID pandemic and its economic fallout. They let enhanced unemployment benefits expire, and the eviction protections within the CARES Act vanish. That's right. Amid the worst pandemic in 100 years, a time when we need families to take refuge in their homes, the president and his allies have left millions teetering on the edge of homelessness. If this callous obstructionism continues, we risk facing a foreclosure and eviction catastrophe even more devastating than what happened during the financial crisis. That's why I and my Democratic colleagues are fighting for additional assistance for families, whether they rent or they own their home. We're calling for $100 billion to help renters, particularly low-income renters, and $75 billion for homeowners. And I'm personally leading 24 of my Democratic Senate colleagues on a bill to provide over $500 million in housing counseling assistance. As you all know, homeowners who receive counseling have better outcomes than those who don't. Their risk of default goes down. They're more likely to secure a sustainable mortgage modification, protect their credit scores, and most of all, keep their homes. At a time like this, we should be making it easier for families to refinance their homes, not harder. Because we know entire neighborhoods suffer when waves of foreclosures rip through our communities. Likewise, we need to provide emergency assistance to the most vulnerable, especially low-income senior citizens who are most susceptible to COVID-19. That's why I'm also fighting for legislation to provide $1.2 billion in aid for older adults living in federally assisted housing. The Emergency Housing Assistance for Older Adults Act provides additional rental assistance for senior housing, personal protective gear, and staffing to help maintain healthy communities. Here's the bottom line. Keeping people in their homes is in the best interest of all Americans if we want to get this pandemic under control, our economy growing again, and all of our lives back on track. So thank you for all that you're doing to help New Jersey families stay in their homes, because every family, in times good or bad, deserves a place to call home. And in the midst of a once-in-a-century pandemic, having a safe and affordable place to live is a matter of life and death. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad we got the video because he's wonderful. We love listening to the senator, and he is such a champion for us. And one of the things he talked about, and I really want to stress this so everyone hears it very clearly, housing counseling makes a difference. We know housing counseling gets people into homes. Housing counseling keeps people in homes. Housing counseling helps people determine if they should be a renter or if they should be a homeowner. Housing counseling helps the banks so that we don't have foreclosures. So it really is so important that he is promoting that for us and fighting for us. And I should put my camera back on, which I did not do, so I apologize for that. Erica, really thank you for getting the video for us from the senator. Please give our best wishes to the senator and thank him for his message and all he's doing to fight for us. We know he's been a friend of the network. He has for a long time, and he has definitely helped us. We are housing counseling intermediary, HUD-funded housing counseling intermediary in New Jersey, and we also run the statewide housing counseling organization. So we are very, very pleased that he is really promoting housing counseling and the funding for that issue. So thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you. And thank you to the network. You guys really keep us apprised of what's going on the ground.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. We always are.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We love it when you guys are in touch.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So we are moving along here. We've got a couple more presenters. Chantel Wilkinson, for those of you who have been at one of our legislative days in Trenton, you've met her. She's been a speaker for us before, and she is the housing campaign coordinator for the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And there she is. She just popped on screen. We have been working with her as she's been the campaign coordinator for the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign, national campaign. And it's a long-term multi-sector campaign to meet the rental housing needs of the nation's low-income people by creating the political will to provide resources that will put these solutions into practice in communities across the nation. NLIHC launched the Opportunity Starts at Home campaign with other national organizations in 2018. And we were part of the first cohort or first class of funded organizations in Opportunity Starts at Home and are very proud of being part of it and are continuing that work as we move forward. So I am going to turn it over to Chantel. You good? You got your camera and your sound?
Yeah.
It's okay.
You can hear
Then we can hear you. Thank you for being with us. I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, Sharon gave such a great description of the campaign. So we sit at NLIHC, and what we do is we bring different advocates from other sectors into housing advocacy. And so our New Jersey partners, they've been with us from the start. And what they do is they build out those multi-sector partnerships on the state level, and they use those partnerships to advance federal housing policy. So I'm going to echo a lot of what Diane said. So basically doubling down on a lot of the things that she's encouraging us to do at this time. But in response to COVID-19, we've done a number of things. We've sent a number of sign-on letters with our multi-sector partners over to Congress advocating for these housing resources. We've sent over 2,000 letters through our Take Action page on our website, and that's individual advocates sending pre-formatted letters over to their congressional members. And then we also conducted a national opinion poll to see how the public was feeling about housing instability during this time. I'm sorry, I would have sent some slides over, so sorry about that. So bear with me, I'm just gonna tell you some of the top line results. So some of the things that we found from that survey is that over 50% of people in the country said that they are concerned that they will lose their housing if they don't get additional assistance. And this large number is especially acute among renters and people of color. We also found that people are making sacrifices. So nearly half, 46% of the public reports that they've had to make at least one sacrifice since the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak to make sure they could pay for rent or mortgage during this time. And this includes things like cutting back on healthy foods, stopping retirement savings, using credit cards to pay for rent, borrowing money from friends, skipping on other bills like water or electric bills. And these are not trivial sacrifices. These are big sacrifices people are making during this time in order to pay for rent. We also asked about existing unemployment benefits. So some people, they're receiving some unemployment benefits through the CARES Act, and we found that among those who applied for unemployment benefits, a significant portion, 3 in 10, do not believe that unemployment benefits will cover their basic living expenses, and that includes their housing costs over the next several months. And then we also found that the folks, public, really wants their elected officials to do something. So 8 in 10 agree that our elected leaders are not putting enough attention on people's need to pay for housing during this time. And so that was really an informative poll that we conducted, and you can find all of our information on our website, opportunityhome.org, which has all of the polling results, the full polling data if you wanted to look at that. And so during this time, as Diane mentioned, we've been advocating for a lot of the resources that were in the HEROES Act, and it has been 102 days since the release of the HEROES Act. And those things that we've made priority include uniform moratorium on evictions. So this ensures that people do not get evicted. 100 billion in emergency rental assistance. So these are for folks who've lost their jobs, making sure that they can pay their rent during this time. At least 11.5 billion in homeless assistance. And this would really help providers and crisis managers during this time that are on the front line helping with the homeless population. And also 10 billion for housing choice vouchers as well. And so, as you know, we're at a standstill with Congress. They've gone for recess, and it's been incredibly difficult to get a sense of when negotiations will start up again. And so this stalemate will have a tremendous impact on evictions nationwide. And so it's critical that we keep holding Congress accountable, especially Republicans, for this relief package. We've continued with a robust social media response. If you follow Opportunity Starts at Home at Op Starts at Home or Enlight C, you'll see that we've been doing this daily robust social media campaign, really pushing for these housing resources. You can follow our hashtags, Rent Relief Now, the hashtag for Get Back to Work, a hashtag for Do Your Job. And so we're really ramping up on social media. So definitely, if you have a social media account, if you have a Twitter account, please join us in those efforts. Please continue to contact your Congress members. I know in New Jersey, you guys are doing well in terms of the assistance, but nationwide, we still need a lot of these resources. So please just continue to keep it at the top line. I mean, it's incredible that it cannot be on anyone's top line at this time, but just keep pushing for the full ask that we've been asking for. You can also, if you haven't done so already, go on opportunityhome.org and go to our Take Action page where we do have those letters, and make sure that you send one over to your members of Congress. And also know that to keep updated on what we're doing on the federal level, NLIHC, they host a meeting every Monday. It's our coronavirus updates meeting. It happens at 2:30, from 2:30 to 4:30, and we keep updates every week on what's happening in Congress in terms of these resources, what other tools are out there to help folks on the ground. So definitely, if you want to keep updates weekly on those progress, please make sure that you're signing up for that webinar that happens every Monday. And so through our polling results and also what Diane said about our prolonged assistance, we found that during this time, it's been even more critical and really even more stamped into folks' minds that we really do need to address the housing crisis. And so since the launch of the campaign, we've been advocating for resources to bridge the gaps between rents and incomes, to build more housing in inclusive communities and create resources in order to really facilitate that, and to create this federal program that would address temporary assistance so that during times like these, when people are experiencing massive loss in employment, that folks have emergency assistance that can help them not spiral out of control. So I want to thank you so much for having me today, and thank you guys so much for all of your continued advocacy. And we just want to keep encouraging you all to just keep pushing as we keep pushing Congress to enact these vital housing resources during this time. Thank you.
Chantel, thank you so much. The information you just shared is really incredible, and we will continue bringing all the information forward on the Opportunity Starts at Home program. I love those hashtags that you have, Get Back to Work. It's one of my favorites, and I think it's important that we get those out there. We will be sending out more information after this event today, so if there's anything, a one-pager or something with the hashtags that you'd like us to send out, we can get it out to all the participants from today and get a link into our newsletter. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So you being with us always. We always appreciate when we get a chance to talk to you. So you have a great day, and we will move along here then. Thanks. So so next we've got a staffer here. Sophie is on the line from Congressman Kim's office, and we will make sure that she has an opportunity to talk. But we have a brief message from Congressman Kim. He is a junior congressman from New Jersey right now. Andy is a former diplomat serving his first term as a U.S. representative from New Jersey's 3rd Congressional District. The district stretches from the eastern suburbs of Philadelphia to the Jersey Shore, which is where I am. The first bill that Kim introduced in February of 2019 was the Strengthening Healthcare and Lowering Prescription Drug Costs Act, which is called the SAVE Act. In May of 2019, the SAVE Act was passed by the House, 234 to 183. The bill is designed to lower prescription drug costs, which, as we all know, is a huge issue and a burden on many people. He serves on the United States House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis, a bipartisan committee to provide oversight on the Trump administration's address to the COVID pandemic. And he works very closely with our members in his district. And I know that he's been very accessible. He's done a separate meeting with us. So at this point, we will go to the video quickly. And if you
Hi everyone, this is Congressman Andy Kim. I'm here in my office in Washington, and I so badly wish we have a chance to be able to meet in person. I know under normal circumstances, we would be able to do just that. And what I promise you, as soon as we're able to, we'll find some more time for us to be able to talk together. Because the issues that we need to talk together about are so critically important right now more than ever. First off, I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. I know this pandemic and this financial crisis have put a huge burden upon all of our families. And I know that the issues about housing and making sure that we can have a roof over our head and afford these costs that we have in our lives is something that a lot of people right now are struggling with, and the anxiety is so high. This is interconnected. We need to understand that our healthcare requires us to have a roof over our head. Housing is about healthcare when we are able to make sure that we are providing essential parts of people's daily lives to help keep them safe, keep them healthy, to be able to get through these challenges. And that's what I want to work with you together on going forward. I have committed to these issues my whole career. I got my start in policy and politics working on issues of homelessness and affordable housing. And this is something that is very personal to my family, as my father experienced homelessness when he was a child. So I want to make sure that I continue to work with you to address every aspect of this, whether that is people who are still struggling after Superstorm Sandy in Ocean County about having their homes there, to be able to make sure that we're prepared for the next storms that could very well devastate our community, to the issues that people are facing across the board when it comes to financial hardship and holding on to a job and be able to pay their rent or pay their mortgage. So I look forward to working with you all on this together, and I hope and wish you well in the meantime. Please stay safe and healthy, and look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Sophie, thank you so much for making sure that we had the message from the congressman. I know he really did try to be on the call with us today, and we do look forward to having another meeting with him separately on the issues affecting his congressional district. But do you have anything you want to share with the group or to go over?
No, absolutely. So I think the congressman didn't mention where a lot of his feelings for this issue, it's really close to home, come from. His dad, and I don't know if anyone knows it on the call, actually was homeless for a large amount of time in South Korea. And so this is an issue that's one of the top priorities of the congressman. And he takes it really seriously from a deep, deep place. He always wants me to send him updates on what's happening with foreclosures or renters getting kicked out of their homes for a variety of reasons coming out of New Jersey. I know that he is very much aware that in 2019, New Jersey had the highest rate of foreclosures in the United States. And he is increasingly concerned about this and many other issues regarding housing. I mean, if you want me, I'm happy to list all his legislation he has signed on to regarding housing, but I know you've heard from many members, so I won't bore you, but this is an issue that is really, really close and dear to the congressman's heart. And I'm just happy that I'm here to support him on that and to hear legislation or issues from you guys on it.
Actually, I know the group met with him from the area, and I know that they're looking to do that again. Sophie, I'm going to ask you the same question I've been asking before. What can we do to help Congressman Kim with moving forward the issues that he's working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know your group and other housing groups throughout New Jersey have been flagging issues for our office. I mean, there's so many things happening right now with housing. So if you're seeing something on the ground that maybe can have a legislative solution to, flag it to our office. We really want to stay on top of these issues and to be proactive in a way I think, Congressman Kim likes to. So please flag issues. Maybe we can't do anything through our office, or maybe we could sign it to someone else's bill. And we really want that.
That's true. I started talking without unmuting myself. Okay, so we're playing virtual bingo, right? So I didn't unmute myself. Sophie, I know you've been on as you heard the other presentations and you've been listening to them. Is there anything in particular that the congressman is moving forward right now that we should be addressing?
I
know
want
he's
to
been
say
really working on the HEROES Act. I know that's been a big one for him.
That's what I was going to say. So you took the words right out of my mouth. HEROES has been a very, is in passion for the congressman. As you guys know, he's on the coronavirus task force. And so he has a lot of oversight and need a lot of insight into how to build HEROES, et cetera, to make sure it's going to be effective. And right now, we will just see what happens, sadly, in the future with HEROES and coming to a conclusion with a lot of different things on the stimulus side. But yeah, HEROES is the thing I would say the congressman wants to push forward the absolute most for 1,001 issues.
And I would mention that the congressman is very involved with our joint base here, McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, and making sure that the veterans are taken care of and that the service members all have housing. So he's involved in a lot, and I don't think people hear enough of all the things that our congressional representatives are doing. And we really appreciate you being here today, Sophie. I know I've been back and forth with you on email, so I really appreciate you doing this today. Please tell the congressman that I saw him live on television, so I know he was in DC. Please tell him that we were sorry he couldn't be with us today, but that we very much appreciate all he's doing for us.
Absolutely, will do. And I'll just say he's on the Homeless Veteran Families Act, which is trying to help homeless veterans. So we are very much involved in that. But thank you so much, and I will absolutely tell the Congress. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sophie. You have a great day. Take care. So, folks, we have one last presentation, and I'm not sure if the staffer is back on. We were having technical problems, so we went out of order a little bit. But we do have a video that is from Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, and she is also a junior congressperson. This is her first time there. If you don't know about her, you should definitely read about her, find out more. Very interesting woman. She's the former U.S. Navy helicopter pilot and former federal prosecutor who is now serving as the U.S. representative for New Jersey's 11th congressional district since 2019. She's worked closely with our members in the Morris County Housing Alliance, where she was the speaker at their last virtual meeting. And she helped secure $7.1 million for Morris County and $1.8 million for Sussex County through the state's allocation of the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was established by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which is the CARES Act. When she was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, she served as the Outreach and Reentry Coordinator. Congresswoman Sherrill developed programs to help prevent crime in the community. These programs develop trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve and help people leaving prison to gain employment, housing, and education in order to restart their lives. She currently chairs the Science Subcommittee on the Environment, and we have a brief video from her. And when I'm just mentioning Arden, I'm not sure if you were able to get back on, but if you were, let us know, and we will go with the video right now.
Hi everyone, this is Mikey Sherrill from the 11th District of New Jersey. Thanks so much for holding this virtual Congressional Day. I'm sorry we couldn't be together for your flying event like we would in years past, but I'm glad we can be together virtually this morning. Housing security is essential for families across our community. This was a critical issue before the pandemic, but over time it's become only more urgent. Our counties, towns, and local housing organizations are working around the clock to provide support for our residents as we face the unprecedented challenges of COVID. I've heard from our own communities here in the 11th District. I held a roundtable discussion with representatives from 16 Morris County housing-related organizations in July, many of whom I expect are on the call this morning. We talked about how members of the Housing Alliance of Morris County are meeting the incredible challenges of the pandemic across the spectrum of populations they serve, including individuals, families, veterans, survivors of domestic violence, and those with mental health conditions. We discussed the impact of shelters operating at reduced capacity due to COVID, the potential for a surge in evictions, and the critical safety net provided by expanded unemployment insurance. Our discussion around unemployment insurance was particularly important and helped me explain to my colleagues in Congress why extending the enhanced unemployment benefits is such an issue of housing security. Feedback from stakeholders like you make me a better representative in Washington, and I'm grateful for the continued dialogue. I fought to get increased, direct, and rapid support for New Jersey and our community into the CARES Act. Grant funding helps our local governments and community organizations in their ongoing response efforts. In April, I announced that Essex, Morris, and Passaic counties would receive a combined $7 million in COVID Recovery Community Development Block grants and Emergency Solutions grants, and that Bloomfield, Parsippany, and Wayne would receive hundreds of thousands in funding from the CDBG program. As you know, the CDBG and ESG grants help states and municipalities build capacity to address the COVID-19 crisis, spur economic development, address homelessness, and support transitional housing and secure housing assistance for low-income individuals. And last week, I was proud to announce that 8 organizations across the 11th District received $719,000 in CARES Act funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This latest funding from the CARES Act supports Housing Choice Vouchers units and project-based voucher projects. This was part of a larger block of federal funding coming into New Jersey and will help our neighbors stay in their homes during this difficult time. There's a lot more work to be done. I want to see the next coronavirus response package include extended unemployment benefits, housing assistance, and an eviction moratorium. The House passed the HEROES Act more than 100 days ago, which expanded the eviction moratorium and protections that we put into place in the CARES Act to include nearly all rental properties across the country. The legislation would also extend the moratorium for 12 months and allocate $200 billion for housing programs and $100 billion for rental assistance. The Senate's proposed package doesn't include anything on these issues, so I'd like to see them come to the table and address this with the House. I'll keep fighting in Congress for safe and affordable housing in New Jersey, and I'm so grateful to have organizations like the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey advocating for our residents. Thank you again, and I hope to see you all soon.
I'm not sure if Arden is on the call again because we did lose connection with him, but I wanted to thank the Congresswoman for being willing to send us a video today and have staff on the call. As I said, if you don't know what she's been doing, you really should read about her and see the things that she's been doing. It's been very impressive in her first session in Congress. So Nina, do you want to go to the next slide? We're just about done, folks, and I want to make sure that I get a couple other things out to you. So our next member call is on Friday, September 11th at 11 a.m. If you have received the invitation, please sign up. Each one is a new sign up now. So we do need you to sign up for that. And then we have Legislative Day on September 15th. So we'll be meeting with our New Jersey representatives and having some breakout meetings for our members as well. We can't be in Trenton together, but we can definitely be in Trenton virtually. So we hope you'll join us for that. And next slide, please, Nina. Under One Roof, as I've said, is our conference, and that is October 15th and 16th. And we hope that you will join us. We will have some of the speakers that were on here today in breakouts so that they can have more of a dialogue with you and a back and forth. Registration is open, and we are also looking for nominations of outstanding municipal partners. So please go to our website. The link is there, but go to hcdnnj.org, and you can click on this logo that you see right there about Under One Roof. There's information about the conference for registration. There's also information about the awards that you can nominate your municipality who's been a great partner to you. Nina, next. And thank you. So we recorded this. If you want to see any part of it again, it is recorded. And we thank all of you for being part of our virtual Congressional Day and being with us. And we hope that you got some information out of this today. We will have follow-up information from it that will be on our website. And we really appreciate your time. I do know we went a little over, but wanted to make sure you heard from all of our wonderful representatives and senators and their staff who wanted to share information with you, and especially our partners from DC, from the Center for Policy and Budget, NLIHC, Opportunity Starts at Home. These are all important partners that we work with all the time. So thank you all. Stay well, be well, and we'll see you hopefully soon. Bye-bye.